When I was about 5 years old, my parents divorced at a young age, and no divorce is pretty, no divorce ever goes well, but after 7 court cases and both parents filing for bankruptcy, it got really, really bad really quickly. I was always made fun of. I never had a lot of friends, and with a broken family and no friends, I quickly started to migrate to the wrong crowd. In about 8th grade, I turned to drugs as an escape, but of course, the escape only lasted a couple hours before I came down, and then depression, anxiety, and fear followed whenever I wasn't high. I did everything that I could to chase the drugs that I wanted, but they were never fulfilling. They just left me empty, like a hole in my heart. And it was a freshman in high school when I was beyond depressed. I was suicidal constantly, until one day I decided I was going to end it all. I took an immense amount of pills, drank a bunch of alcohol, and smoked a ton. And with a knife to my neck, I was going to do it. The only thing that stopped me from doing it was I heard this voice in my head, and it said, "Stop. You have so much more to live for than this." So I put that knife down, I set my alarm for the next morning for school, and went to bed. And about a year later, my dad woke me up at the early hours of 10 in the morning and said, "We're going to church." And I said, "No, we're not." But regardless, he won the fight, and we ended up going to church. And after the message was over, I walked out into the foyer where everyone was just mingling and things like that, and I bumped into an old friend of mine, Cooper. And it was there that we just kind of hit it off. We started talking and just talking about school and things like that. And right before we parted ways, he goes, "Wait, you're a singer, aren't you?" And I go, "Yeah, I am." He goes, "Oh man, I help lead the high school youth team, the youth worship team. Why don't you help me lead?" And I go, "Yeah, sure, that sounds great." And this went on for about a year, where I was still a drug addict and I wasn't a Christian, but I was leading worship. And more often than not, I was leading worship high. And it was there that I started to ask bigger questions. It was there that I felt safe that I could ask questions, because I think a lot of people knew that I wasn't a Christian, but I never really said that I wasn't. But they still loved me for who I was. And they prayed for me, and they knew that I had a broken family, and they treated me like family, even though I really wasn't a Christian and I was a complete mess. And from there, about a year later, as my senior year in high school, we just did our youth group, and after worship was done, Cooper and I walked off the stage and we sat down, and there's this huge promo for Dare to Share. And for whatever reason, I just felt this need that I needed to go there. I felt this pull that I needed to go. So I walked over to the youth pastor at the time and I said, "Hey, I really feel like I need to go to this conference, but I have no money whatsoever to go." And without hesitation, he just smiled at me and said, "It's paid for, you're going." From right off the bat, the conference was just amazing. I went, and there was all sorts of promos for Colorado Christian University, great speakers, and the band was just amazing. And after a couple speakers, Greg Steer came on to the stage and did his message, and it was brilliant. And at the end of it, he gave the gospel and asked everyone to raise their hand. I didn't raise my hand, but after he left the stage, the band came back out and started with a few new other worship songs. And it was during the very first song that I sat down and I kept asking myself, is this real? Are you real? Do you even exist? And it was there that I actually heard, "Yeah, I'm right here." And it was a light bulb in my head that went off. Right after that, I walked over to my youth pastor and I tapped him on the shoulder, and he turns around, he looks at me, and I look him in the eyes, I go, "I believe." He just wraps his arms around me, and he whispers in my ear, "You have no idea how long I've waited for this moment." And it was this overwhelming experience, but as soon as that experience ended, all the feelings faded, and I just realized to myself, oh my God, I have so much to do. I was a full-fledged drug addict, and I knew it, and I needed to make a change, but didn't really know how. I would go about 4 months, and then I would use again. I would go 6 months, and then I would use again. I just kept stumbling and falling, and I always just felt like such a failure. And there was always this immense shame and regret that carried on my shoulders every single time that I would use. And it wasn't until that I actually admitted that I will always be an addict that I actually started to make breakthroughs. And I went to my worship pastor, who was really mentoring me at the time, and I said, "I'm really struggling with this and I can't shake it." And he goes, well, why don't you go to Celebrate Recovery? Why don't we pray for you? Why don't we get you help? Let's come alongside you and help you. It wasn't until I came clean that the healing could really begin. Because it was then that I came clean, that I acknowledged that I was broken, that I acknowledged that I couldn't do it alone. And I welcomed people to come alongside me and help me. It was there that healing really took place. It was there that I was able to overcome this addiction. About a year later, I packed my bags and moved to CCU to study to be a worship pastor. And it was from CCU that I needed an internship to graduate. And it was from that internship that I landed here at Grace Church, the very church that started Dare to Share.